Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the podcast. And today I'm going to do my review of AEW's Dynamite. Starting off the evening, we have a Samoa Joe segment. Joe comes down to the ring. He talks about opportunities need to be earned in AEW, especially when it pertains to the AEW World Championship. Joe then sends a stern message to the AEW roster. Hook then comes down to the ring. He pays respect to Samoa Joe, but he also says that he will get another shot at his belt again. After Hook says that, Joe then asks security to escort Hook out of the ring, and then Hook ends up attacking the AEW security. A couple of things I want to say about this, man. Number one, the match with Samoa Joe and Hook that happened last week, to me, was a banger match. It was a great match. It was a great showing from Hook. And obviously, you know, the vignettes that Tony Khan and AEW has been doing for Hook the past couple of weeks leading up to that match that he had with Samoa Joe was absolutely awesome. It was awesome. With that being said, though, when Hook came out to the ring and you know, grabbed a live microphone, I don't think that's the direction I would necessarily put Hook moving forward. I think the promo aspect of Hook is just not there, clearly. And just how he, you know, with the promo that he cut on Joe last night, all this stuff could have been said backstage or a backstage interview with Renee. There was no reason for Hook to come out to the center of the ring and, you know, cut that awful promo on Samoa Joe just for us to, you know, we could, like I said, we could have had this backstage with Renee, or, you know, maybe Samoa Joe was walking, you know, in the back and probably crossed paths with Hook, and then, you know, they had an exchange of words backstage. Who knows? But to me, you know, and I said this last week about Hook is, okay, after him losing to Samoa Joe, what happens next with Hook? Is he going to stay in the back of the line? Obviously, the rankings, which I'll touch bases on here towards the end of the podcast, the rankings are now back with AEW, and they should be in full effect here relatively soon. So, obviously, rankings are going to have a lot to do with it as far as title shots and title opportunities are given. It's all going to come down to the rankings. But, you know, where do you put Hook after that match? You know, does Hook have decent matches, or is he going to be facing enhancement talent leading up to a possible rematch with Samoa Joe? So, again, it's still yet to be seen. Moving on from that, we go into our first official match of the night. It is Adam Page versus Penta. Samoa Joe was ringside on commentary throughout this match. The match itself was a good match. Back and forth matchup between Page and Penta. Page and Penta then both exchanged chops in the middle of the ring, with Penta hitting a sling blade on Page in the middle of the ring. Page then gets up, hits a fallaway slam on Penta. Page then hits a running shooting star press on Penta for a near fall. Page was trying to keep the pace of the match with hitting a Death Valley driver on Penta for a near fall as well. Page then hits a pump up powerbomb for a near fall. Penta kicks out. Page then goes for a buckshot lariat, but Penta counters. Page then hits a devastating deadeye off the apron on Penta that looked absolutely brutal. Page then goes to hit a moonsault to the outside, takes out Penta, and then Page hits a buckshot lariat for the finish, pins for the 3. And your winner of the match is Adam Page. Hats off to Adam Page for getting the win in this matchup. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is Wardlow versus Trent Beretta. I thought this was a decent match. Back and forth matchup between Wardlow and Beretta, with Wardlow pretty much keeping the pace throughout the entire match. Trent hits Wardlow with a chair shot. The referee was distracted. Trent then hits a half and half on Wardlow. Trent hits a pile driver on Wardlow as well. But Wardlow gets up, hits a power slam on Beretta, as well as a power bomb, pins him for the 3, and your winner of the match is Wardlow. After the match, looks like there was a little hostility between the Best Friends and Orange Cassidy and the Undisputed Kingdom. And again, there's obviously some hostility because Roderick Strong also wants to challenge Orange Cassidy for the AEW International Championship. Moving on from that, we have a sit-down between Deonna Purrazzo and Toni Storm. Looks like Purrazzo is going to be the next challenger for Toni Storm's AEW Women's Championship. So Purrazzo and Storm have a sit-down. Toni then mocks Purrazzo. Toni talks about her friends in AEW and that they don't really, you know, they're not as good as Toni Storm. Toni then praises Purrazzo at the same time. He also says Deonna says that she is an AEW to be world champion. Purrazzo then wants to face the old Toni Storm. Purrazzo also mentions the history that her and Toni Storm have had and that they were best friends. And both Purrazzo and Toni show off matching tattoos that they both have, which I thought was very interesting. Obviously, there's a big-time friendship between Deonna Purrazzo and Toni Storm. They both had matching tattoos. Purrazzo then attacks Toni Storm, and then Purrazzo holds up the AEW Women's title to pretty much signify the fact that she is coming after the AEW Women's Championship. So I'm definitely looking forward to this possible matchup between Toni Storm and Deonna Purrazzo. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is Jeff Hardy versus Swerve. I thought this was a really good match, man. Back and forth matchup between Jeff and Swerve, with Swerve keeping the pace, but Jeff hits a Whisper in the Wind off the top rope on Swerve. Hardy then hits a Twist of Fate off the steel steps. Swerve gets up, hits a house call for a near fall. Swerve then hits a rolling flatliner on Jeff Hardy, and then Swerve ultimately hits a Swerve stomp off the top rope on Hardy, pins him for the 3, and your winner of the match is Swerve. Couple things I want to say about this match, man. Number one, why it was booked, I have no idea. I can't even explain to y'all why I think this match was booked. I can't do it. What I will say is this, and again, I will touch bases on this towards the end of the podcast, but rankings are going to matter in 2024 for AEW. So you're going to see a lot of oddball matches in 2024. It's going to happen, which may cripple the company or make major improvements to the company with the new ranking system or the old ranking system coming back into 2024. The other thing I would say about this matchup as well is Jeff and Matt Hardy. I know that personally that Matt and Jeff Hardy, from people that I've talked to, have reached out and gathered some news about the Hardys, and even myself have done my own research on the Hardy Boys since they've been with AEW, and to me it seems like the Hardy Boys are kind of pissed off. It seems like the Hardys are done being on Rampage or Collision. They want to be on the premier shows. They want to be on Dynamite, and they want to be, showcased very well. Which could happen. The problem that I have with that is that unfortunately, with everything that's happened with AEW as of late, and I say this from the end of last year, is that AEW needs to hit the reset button. And I was kind of hoping they were doing that, especially when it pertained to the tag team division, especially when they brought in Mark Quinn to reunite Isaiah Cassidy and Private Party as a tag team, and them putting out that promo against, for the tag team division, that put the tag team division on notice and said that they're going to go after the AEW World Titles. I think for the Hardys, I think that's the best bet for the Hardys, is to put themselves in the tag team division and, get more predominant matches, because at the end of the day, like I said, with the rankings, you don't know how much storyline is going to be built around these rankings. You really don't. You might see the direction of where they're going, but there might not be storylines leading into that direction of that match. It's two completely different things. So for me, I think Jeff really lobbied himself for this matchup against Swerve because the frustrations that were mounting for the Hardys, because Jeff and both Matt wanted to be on the premier show, which was Dynamite, and they felt like they were getting shafted, and they felt like they weren't getting their fair share or a fair shake in AEW as of late, because Tony Khan has booked them on, Rampage and Collision and stuff like that. I mean, not for nothing, it's I said the same thing about Trent Beretta. You have certain individuals that are a part of a tag team. It's very hard for them or that individual to go on a singles run when they're known to be in a tag team. I think Trent Beretta is an example of that. I think Trent is a great wrestler, but unfortunately, more people are going to be invested in Trent Beretta teaming up with Chuck Taylor as the best friends that they are on a singles run. It's the same thing with Jeff. Now, they already accomplished this between Jeff and Matt in WWE, where it actually panned out more for Jeff than it did Matt Hardy. And Jeff Hardy had, a decent run in WWE, and even a run as a world champion when he was on a singles run, and Matt obviously did his thing with, the United States Championship and stuff like that. But obviously it paid off more for Jeff than it did Matt. But as far as an overall success rate, I mean, I wouldn't say like, oh yeah, Jeff's one of the greatest singles competitors of all time. No, but he's a great tag team wrestler when he's teaming up with his brother Matt. It's a completely different story when you look at someone like an Adam Copeland and a Christian Cage, where as a tag team they're phenomenal. Edge and Christian are phenomenal, but they both had really solid singles run. Edge had a tremendous singles run with multi-world champions, great storylines, WrestleMania moments, WrestleMania matches. Christian, on the other hand, his WWE run as a singles competitor, it didn't really work out too well for Christian in WWE, but I will say this. I think Christian's single run in TNA really paid off for Christian a hell of a lot more than what it did in WWE, especially when Christian was a heel, which he is a bona fide born heel. So again, it's just one of those things where I feel like Jeff really lobbied himself for this matchup against Swerve because, he felt as if the Hardys were getting we're getting a fair share or a fair shake in AEW, and they've already voiced their frustrations multiple times at the fact that they are tired of being on Rampage and want to be on AEW's primary show with AEW Dynamite. So, who knows, man? I will say this, though, on behalf of Jeff Hardy. You know, last night the match that he had with Swerve was one of the best showings I've seen of Jeff as of late since he's been with AEW. It was a solid matchup, and it wasn't like Swerve was entirely carrying the match last night between him and Jeff. So Jeff really was holding his own, and Jeff put on a really good performance last night. So again, if we get that same Jeff Hardy moving forward, you know, then I'm all for it, but it's still yet to be seen what's going to be next for the Hardys, especially Jeff Hardy. Moving on from that, we go into our next match of the night. It is a women's matchup. It is Thunder Rosa making her Dynamite return after being off for so many months. She finally makes her in-ring Dynamite debut against Red Velvet since her return. It was a solid match, man. It was a back-and-forth matchup between Rosa and Velvet, with Rosa keeping the pace of the match. Thunder Rosa then hits a Northern Lights suplex, and then Rosa ultimately hits the finish on Red Velvet, pins for the 3, and your winner of the match is Thunder Rosa. After the match, it looks like Thunder Rosa was kind of shooting for her shot against Toni Storm. So again, this is where the rankings are really going to come into play moving forward for AEW. Moving on from that, we have a Darby Allin and Sting segment. Darby Allin hypes up Sting and what Sting's done for his career. He also talks about the Young Bucks as well. And we see the Young Bucks watching backstage throughout this segment. Darby then says that this should be for the number 1 contenders match for the AEW Tag Team Championships, and they want to challenge Big Bill and Ricky Starks for the AEW Tag Team Championships. Darby also says that Sting still has it. He also mentions seeing Sting in Texas and, you know, having a couple, I wouldn't say matches, but some training with Sting, and that's when, you know, Darby kind of found out that Sting still has it. And then Sting says that he wants a chance at the AEW Tag Team Championships against Big Bill and Ricky Starks, which that match will take place in 2 weeks. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. And also the Young Bucks, man. The Young Bucks and what they've been doing the past couple weeks, man, has been awesome. I'm loving the fact that they come back as heels. You know, they don't want to be known as Matt and Nick Jackson anymore. They want to go by their airport, I believe it was their airport names or whatever they said. It was their proper ID names, Matthew and Nicholas Jackson, which I thought was hilarious. They're really playing into the EVP stuff, which I think is great. Even the stuff they said to Dante Martin and Darius Martin backstage from Top Flight, saying that they were going to fine him from being late and all this other stuff. It's just they're really playing into it. Do I think it has a shelf life? Yeah, I do think it has a shelf life. But, I mean, my God, man, what better way for Sting and Darby to win the AEW Tag Team Championships and then the Young Bucks beat Sting and Darby Allin possibly at Revolution on March 3rd, man. Matt and Nick Jackson are going to be the biggest heels in the business for a very long time if that were to be the case at Revolution, so I'm definitely looking forward to that. Moving on from that, we have an AEW 6-man Tag Team Championship match for once. It is the Acclaim defending the AEW 6-man Tag Team Championships against Mogul Embassy. It was a solid match, back-and-forth matchup between both teams with the Acclaim keeping the pace of the match. Anthony Bowens hits a devastating blockbuster off the top rope. The Guns put Prince Nana through the Timekeeper's table, which I thought was hilarious. Billy Gunn then hits a Famouser, and then Caster hits a mic drop, pins for the 3, and your winners of the match, and still AEW 6-man Tag Team Champions, are the Acclaimed. Hats off to the Acclaimed for getting the win in that match. And again, hats off to the Bullet Club Gold, man, for getting involved and helping the Acclaimed. It looks like the Acclaimed and Bullet Club Gold are now a faction, which is now the Bang Bang Scissor Gang now, which I think is absolutely awesome. And I think it's one of those stables that are going to be a force to be reckoned with, especially with the possible return here, hopefully, sometime this year with the return of Juice Robinson. Moving on from that, we go into the main event of the evening. It was commercial-free. It was Adam Copeland versus Minoru Suzuki. I thought this was a decent match. Back-and-forth matchup between Copeland and Suzuki, with Copeland and Suzuki both exchanging in the middle of the ring. Copeland then hits an impaler on Suzuki. Copeland then goes for a spear. Suzuki then counters with an armbar. Copeland then breaks the hold. Copeland then hits a spear for a near fall on Suzuki, but Suzuki applies a submission hold on Copeland. Copeland breaks the hold, and then Copeland hits a kill switch on Minoru Suzuki, pins it for the 3, and your winner of the match is Adam Copeland. Hats off to Adam Copeland for getting the win in this matchup. So a couple of things I want to say about AEW, man. And there's going to be a lot I got to say here, so again, it's going to be a lot. So let's talk about the AEW rankings. And I touched bases on this earlier that I was going to talk about this towards the end of the podcast. The AEW rankings are returning to AEW. Now, there's been a lot of speculation about these rankings. There was even rumors that CM Punk, when he came into AEW, he did not want the rankings in AEW, and he thought it was a flawed system, and they got rid of the rankings when he came into AEW. Now, on that point of view, I think Phil Brooks was right. I don't think the rankings, I understand, AEW trying to be a little bit different than WWE, and I get that. I really do. And as a fan, I appreciate it. But I think the rankings kind of take away from the storylines being built in AEW. Now, if you guys remember this was a few months back. QT Marshall obviously was with AEW for a while since the very beginning. And from what I understand, he left AEW to go into other ventures. But he also made comments about AEW, pretty much pretending that AEW was going into a more sports dynamic and doing a lot of things similar to All Japan Pro Wrestling, where it really wasn't storyline based. It was more of a sports based pro wrestling. A lot of tournaments, obviously the Triple Crown, so on and so forth, which AEW has done that with the Continental Classic, and obviously the winner became the new Continental Champion. So we've already seen that happen, and obviously for what it's worth, that was some of the best AEW television that we've seen for a while with the Continental Classic tournament, which was awesome. Me personally, though, as far as the rankings are concerned, my thing, I feel like it is a flawed system. Because my thing is, even if you're going to have these rankings, is there going to be somebody in the back, or Tony Khan, for all that matter, to follow every single win and loss from each individual on the AEW roster? I don't see it. And my thing is this: if you're getting wins on Ring of Honor and you're coming over to AEW, I feel like those wins on Ring of Honor should not matter or even give a damn what you're doing. Like for AEW, it shouldn't be relatable because it's two different companies, it's two different entities. And it's two different companies. Like, it shouldn't really matter what you're doing on Ring of Honor compared to AEW. And that's going to be my biggest issue with this ranking system if this does happen, because right there off the rip, it's flawed, in my honest opinion. Secondly, the biggest takeaway from this is that it takes away from storylines. Storylines are a big, big deal in pro wrestling because fans want to be invested. Now, somebody can say, oh, well, why they have the rankings? The rankings is the story. Yeah, it's the direction. You know where they're going. That's great. If Swerve's 18-0 and he calls out Samoa Joe, well, we know why, because Swerve is 18-0. He's the number one on the rankings, and he for a fact that he's going to be calling out Samoa Joe for the World Championship. That's the direction. The issue that I have with that, which is great, we have the direction of where they're going, but where's the storyline behind the direction that they're going? That's my biggest thing. And if they somehow can pull that off, being AEW, that they can, combine the storyline with the direction of where they're going, then perfect. By all means, I'm all for it. But if they only go with direction, you're not going to get storyline. A lot of fans are not going to be invested in what they're doing. Because you already know off the rip that, okay, well, Adam Page is 19-0 or Swerve is 18-0. They're probably one of them are going to be the next challenger for Samoa Joe, which, okay, that's great. All right, awesome. But you go from that to no build, no storyline, nothing. And the only basis you have is the ranking system and that person having a great record or undefeated or whatever in the ranking system, and they're automatically the number one contender for the championship. Okay, awesome, but there's no build, there's no storyline. So there is definitely a possibility of the ranking system being flawed, for sure. And my criticism on this is I don't give a rat's ass what you do on Ring of Honor. I don't care. And I made these comments about Ring of Honor multiple times. Ring of Honor back in the day, it was a great company, a great promotion. It still can be a great promotion, but the issue that I have with it, as of right now, is A, Tony Khan's really not doing jack shit with it, and B, you're seeing more Ring of Honor talent and Ring of Honor championships being showcased and defended on AEW than the AEW championships that are already on the brand. For a prime example, this was the first time in many, many months that we've seen the Acclaimed actually defend their AEW six-man tag team championships, when how many times now have we seen the Ring of Honor six-man tag team championships be defended on AEW? We just had that last week when Bullet Club Gold ended up beating Mogul Embassy to become the new Ring of Honor six-man tag team championships. So we've seen an abundance of Ring of Honor things on AEW. And to me, my standpoint, it will always be the same. That shit needs to stay on Ring of Honor, and we need to focus on what AEW is doing. And I mentioned this last week, AEW needs to focus on what brought them to the dance. Where, yeah, okay, matches and wins do matter. I get that. But storylines need to be built. in the beginning of AEW, there was long story, it was storytelling being built, which got fans invested. And right now, on the flip side of that coin, WWE is doing a lot of crazy shit right now, which I am going to touch bases on here in a minute and let you guys know my opinion on what's going on with WWE here in a minute. But AEW needs to hit the reset button. And I don't think it's 100% the rankings that need to come into AEW. I think storylines need to be invested in. They need to be built so fans can get invested in the match. Because I can tell you this right now, the show last night, it wasn't as bad as the homecoming show at Daly's Place, but it was right behind it. This show was not that great last night, in my honest opinion. And obviously not every AEW show is going to be an absolute banger. I understand that. But at the same time, too, logical booking, storylines, that needs to happen. Because you can't just take a roster and write it on a piece of paper or have an idea and throw it up against the wall and hope it sticks. It's not going to happen. It's not, because fans are not going to be invested. Now, the fans last night, not for nothing, there was crickets, man. The crowd last night was not there at all, in my honest opinion. It was a dead-ass crowd. The fans were not invested in any of these matches last night, except for maybe the Jeff Hardy and Swerve match due to the help from Matt Hardy trying to do his best to hype the damn crowd up because they were falling asleep throughout the entire damn match, which is ridiculous. So, my thing is with AEW, long story short, is that they need to focus on what brought them to the dance. Do I think it's the ranking system? I don't think it is. I think it has its flaws as well. I think if the whole thing about CM Punk was true, about him not wanting to have the ranking system was true, I got to commend CM Punk for that, because CM Punk, to me, understood that it had its flaws. And it does. It definitely does. So, again, you're going to see a lot of matches that are wishy-washy. And I'm hoping that we don't see all these matches that for these rankings be, a main roster talent for AEW against an enhancement talent, and you're going to constantly see that AEW person get over on the enhancement talent just for them to get a win and put them on the rankings. Again, it's another flaw in the system for the AEW ranking system. Like I told you guys a minute ago, I'm all for the rankings if the direction leads into a storyline. If we just get the direction, like I said, Adam Page being a number one contender because he's 18-0, or Swerve is 19-0 in the rankings, and he's probably most likely going to challenge Samoa Joe for the World Championship, that's great. But is there going to be storyline to get us there to that final match? That's my only thing. That's my biggest takeaway from these rankings. It's either going to work, or it's either going to crumble. The other thing I want to get into that's not relatable to AEW is WWE. And I don't cover Raw and SmackDown. I don't. But I'm a wrestling fan at best. So if you guys don't know, and I'm sure you guys probably do by now, I'm just going to give my opinion about this. WWE, specifically Monday Night Raw, had a big day a few days ago. Huge, monumental day for WWE. So what I understand and what I gathered is Monday Night Raw was looking for a new home. Now, this was going on for multiple months, where Monday Night Raw is possibly going to ESPN Plus, maybe Disney. Amazon Prime was also up there, as well as their competitor, where their competitor works for, TBS and Time Warner and TNT. These were all speculations of where possibly Monday Night Raw could end up after their contract deal, their TV deal will be up. Well, that's not the case. Monday Night Raw, starting 2025, will be exclusively on Netflix. That is correct. Raw will be exclusively on Netflix starting January 2025. This is a big deal. This is a huge deal for not only WWE and Monday Night Raw, but as well as wrestling in total. The other thing I learned is that Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, he was a part of this announcement for Monday Night Raw going over to Netflix, and it's also he was also there because now he is a member of the board of directors for TKO, which is the parent company of both WWE and the UFC. And now Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson is now on the board of directors for TKO, which is a very, very big move for Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. He also got his likeness name back from WWE, which, using The Rock, he's able to use that for sponsorships or whatever, moving forward for The Rock, which is absolutely great. But it was a big day for WWE and Monday Night Raw. Now, what this does is this opens up a lot of eyeballs to a lot of streaming services, and this is why I said it relates to pro wrestling in general. Obviously, I'm sure Tony Khan was elated the fact that they didn't sign with Time Warner and TBS and TNT, and now Tony Khan, because Raw went to at Netflix, this gives an opportunity for Tony Khan to make his money when the time comes to negotiate a new TV contract deal with TBS or Time Warner, which, if I had to be a betting man, I'm sure he's going to get that. But there's a lot of situations with AEW too. I think personally with what Raw did with Netflix, a lot of things are going to change, man. I think NBC, Universal, I think Peacock, for all that matter, will come to an end going into 2025 for Netflix. I think Netflix, if I had to be, like I said, a betting man, I think Peacock and all the stuff that's on Peacock, all the PLEs, the documentaries, the old school content that was on there from WCW, ECW, stuff like that, I could very much see that being a part of the library on Netflix. 100%. I also think with this deal with Raw and Netflix, I can see Raw as a whole just changing. I can see that, obviously with them being a part of Netflix, I can see a lot of things with Monday Night Raw changing. I can see, what AEW does with their rings. I can see Netflix having their sponsorship on the turnbuckles, off the ring apron, the barricades. I can totally see that for sure. Especially, due to the fact that it's a humongous sponsor and, they're on Netflix. I can totally see that. The other thing I want you guys to understand as well is that when this deal was made, they did not say that Monday Night Raw was going to be a part of Netflix. They just said Raw. Now, what that could mean and what that can entail is the fact that Raw might not be on Monday nights. Raw has been on Monday nights now for over 30 years, something like that. But now it's just Raw. So there's a very good possibility that Raw might not actually even be on Monday nights moving forward, especially in January of 2025. Raw could be on Wednesday night competing head-to-head with AEW. It could be Tuesday. It could be, who knows? It might not be on Mondays. There's also things about SmackDown as well. I believe it's October 1st of next year. SmackDown is going to be on a Tuesday, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, from what I've heard and what I've been told. So it looks like SmackDown is going to be possibly moving to Tuesday nights, which opens up the door for Monday Night Raw to be on possibly Wednesday nights, which would be a big deal and be a head-on collision between Raw and AEW. Netflix can also be on Friday nights now that they're going to be tied up with the CW network. So a lot of 2024 is going to be a massive, massive year for just pro wrestling in general. And what WWE did a couple days ago, man, it was, wow, literally firing on all cylinders. And having, this monumental moment and having Monday Night Raw no longer on cable television after so long. And the fact that now they're going to be exclusively tied to Netflix. And that Netflix deal, that's the other thing I wanted to talk about. That Netflix deal is huge, man. It's $500 million a year for the next 10 years. So you're talking $5 billion, roughly $5 billion, maybe some, maybe a little extra, maybe a little less, but $5 billion for the next 10 years. And Netflix actually has an option to opt out after 5 years out of the contract with WWE, or add an additional 10 years after their 5 years to add 10 years onto that contract. So we're talking possibly 20 years that Netflix can be a part of the WWE family, which is astronomically insane. So, like I said, this just opens up a lot more doors for not only pro wrestling, but other sports entities like NASCAR, the NFL, PGA, MLB, NHL. This just opens up a lot more doors for a lot of other sports entities out there, or professional wrestling, especially AEW. I will say this: if there's any truth behind the smoke around this, if AEW is going to go to a 12 pay-per-view format, which again I'm all for it, as long as we get storylines. The reason why I'm for it is this will be the perfect time for Tony Khan and AEW to have a streaming deal. This is where HBO Max would come in clutch immensely. I mean, this would be something that would benefit both AEW, obviously people that subscribe to HBO Max, and either people that don't even get TBS or TNT. I mean, this could also be something where if AEW has a deal with HBO Max, anybody can get HBO Max, from what I understand. So, I mean, at the same time, AEW and Tony Khan, they can simulcast both AEW and on regular television on TNT or TBS, and as well as HBO Max. They could put all the previous pay-per-views that were held by AEW for the past few years on HBO Max as a library, as well as Ring of Honor content, and put these pay-per-views on HBO Max and not charge people $50 a month for the entire year for these pay-per-views. if in fact they are going to a 12 pay-per-view format. It just makes more logical sense. I mean, because I'm going to be honest with y'all, man, a lot of people are not going to be willing to fork out $50 a month every single month for these pay-per-views. It's just not, it's not going to happen. And if we're looking at this as a whole, from WWE to AEW, it's the same thing, man. I mean, now that people that watch Monday Night Raw, you might not have a Netflix account, but now if you want to watch Raw, you're going to have to get a Netflix account in order for you to watch Monday Night Raw. But on the flip side of that coin, SmackDown is not on Netflix. SmackDown is going to be continued to be showcased on Fox. So you'll need a Netflix account and a cable account, if you will, to watch both Raw and SmackDown. You'll need Netflix for Raw, and you'll need Fox Network to watch, SmackDown. Also the CW Network if you want to watch NXT. So there's 3 different entities right there alone. Then on the flip side of that coin, you have AEW, which, credit, you have TNT and TBS. You have to pay for a cable subscription, whether it's Sling or wherever you guys get your cable from, Comcast, Verizon, wherever, to watch Dynamite or Collision. But then on the same, again, the same flip side of that coin, if AEW and Tony Khan works with HBO Max, this also saves that consumer a lot of money, because now you're not only paying a cable bill, but then you're paying $50 a month, 12 times, pretty much every month for the year, $50 a pop. When you can have a cable bill, pay for HBO Max, which, yeah, it's kind of the same thing from WWE, but you're also saving money by not spending $50 every single month if AEW does, in fact, go to an 12 pay-per-view format. With WWE, you're automatically paying for, if you want to watch Raw and SmackDown, you're already paying for 2 different entities on itself. You're paying for Netflix, and you're paying for regular cable for Fox, and if you don't have the CW network, you also have to pay for that app, I believe, to watch NXT if you want to watch NXT. So, the way it's looking is that, to me, cable television is not going to be the same probably in the next 5 to 10 years. A lot of it's going to be streaming services right now. Netflix is one of the most watched streaming service globally right now, from what I understand. So, and rightfully so. The content they put out on Netflix is incredible. The movies, the TV shows, the documentaries, stuff like that. Netflix is incredible. My wife watches it pretty much every single day. But the content they put out on Netflix is incredible. So, just putting Monday Night Raw on Netflix is going to bring so many more eyeballs to not only to Netflix, but also to Monday Night Raw. Fans of Netflix are going to be like, oh, what the hell is this Raw shit? Let me watch it. And then it's going to only build up more and more equity for Monday Night Raw as well as Netflix. So it's a win-win for both parties. I just think Tony Khan and AEW needs, if they're, take pretty much a page out of that book from WWE and talk to HBO Max. Because I think it's just well overdue. And obviously Tony Khan can't just say, you know what, yeah, we're going to HBO Max. Obviously there needs to be conversations and stuff like that between both parties with Time Warner and AEW, which I completely understand that. But this is something that needs to happen moving forward for AEW. And I know Tony Khan had mentioned that this is going to be a big year for AEW in 2024. And again, I know he just announced the bringing back of the rankings, but I think it's going to have to be a little bit more than that to really get people invested. Because, like I mentioned to you guys these past few weeks, man, even Collision has not been the same. And I know Collision this weekend is supposed to be a decent show. I'll say that. They got the elimination cage match with FTR and Daniel Garcia versus the House of Black, which is going to be a really solid matchup. They also have Bryan Danielson versus Yuji Nagata, which is going to be a solid matchup in itself. They have a lot of good matches on Collision. They also have the return of Serena Deeb, who's been out since 2022. Again, it's going to be a great addition back to the women's roster, and great to see her back in AEW as well after being gone with injury. So it's a great addition to Collision, having Serena Deeb back. So, but the reason why they're doing that is because of the Royal Rumble. The Royal Rumble is going to be insane this year. There's going to be a lot of questions or answers to questions a lot of people are talking about. Who's going to win the men's Royal Rumble? Who's going to win the women's Royal Rumble? What's going to happen with Seth Rollins with his injury? Is Gunther going to win the men's Royal Rumble and then challenge Seth Rollins at WrestleMania for the World Heavyweight Championship? I mean, it's a lot of things going on right now for WWE, and WWE is firing on all cylinders right now, man. All cylinders. The Rumble is going to be insane. I think the Rumble is going to be absolutely insane for WWE. It's this Saturday at 8 p.m. Eastern on Peacock. It's going to be insane, man. And again, the same thing with Mercedes. And I hate saying this, but this is the truth, man. I know Mercedes has told people that, she's pretty much tying up loose ends and finishing up some of her other projects that she's done with acting and stuff like that in the month of January. But again, until she's, walks through that, that entrance ramp in AEW, then I believe it. I can still believe, to me, I can still see Mercedes showing up this Saturday and being a part of the Rumble. 100%. Nothing's concrete right now with Mercedes. I can see Mercedes showing up at the Rumble. And if she does, then it's great. That place is going to erupt. But again, this is something where, if not, then when for Mercedes? When will she show up in AEW? Will it be all the way in March for Revolution? I don't know. I really don't know. Same thing with Naomi. I know Naomi is rumored to go back to WWE. This will be a perfect time to slot her into the Rumble. She's healthy. She's ready to go. And without, worrying about a storyline based to bring her back into the fold of WWE, you can just bring her back through the Rumble. And then have her just make a name for himself just off the Royal Rumble. It's perfect. The Rumble is going to be crazy, man. The Rumble is going to be absolutely insane. But no, this was a huge week for pro wrestling, man. I mean, WWE, they struck gold with the deal with Netflix. Like I said, Raw going to Netflix in January of 2025. It's a $500 million a year deal for 10 years, which I think equals out to $5 billion a year. Netflix does have the option to opt out after the 5 years. They can either opt out after the 5 years in the 10-year contract, or after the 5 years, they can add an additional 10 years to their current 10-year contract, and they can possibly work in with Raw for the next 20 years. So, I mean, it's insane, man. I mean, that's crazy. It's pandemonium for right now for WWE, and right now, they're firing on all cylinders, man. And again, hats off to Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, man. That guy is all business. All day, every day. I mean, look what he's done in the past few months. It's not even, we're not even talking WWE related. We're talking just what he does on his other projects. I mean, look what he just did with the XFL and the USFL. He united both companies to form, pretty much a badass football league with the United Football League, and joining forces between the USFL and the XFL, and they're joining forces to make one big league. That's awesome. And he's promoting this on College Game Day. He's promoting this on ESPN. It's great stuff, man. And then he goes from that to a couple months down the road to, okay, now you're a member of the board of directors for TKO, which is the parent company of WWE and the UFC. And now, you help, you're a part of this big deal that, WWE secured with Netflix to have Raw on Netflix in January 2025. And not only that, I mean, his daughter is a current roster talent, on the roster for NXT. I believe her name is Ava Rain. Well, what happened on, that Tuesday night on NXT the other day, now she is the GM moving forward for NXT, which was appointed to her by William Regal. So, I mean, they're firing on all cylinders, man. The Rock knows exactly what he's doing. He got his ring name back with The Rock, and he used that for sponsorships and revenue and stuff like that, and he'd probably still use that name and make revenue off that even through his time in WWE. So, I mean, The Rock knows exactly what he's doing, and that guy is firing on all cylinders right now, man. The Rock is he's all business, which I respect the hell out of that for The Rock. And, who knows, man? I mean, right now, like I said, 2024 is going to be a big year for wrestling, and you also have free agents out there that are still looking for a place to go. I mean, the two biggest names that pop up in my head right now are Mercedes and Okada. Okada could possibly, join WWE or join AEW. It's the same thing with Mercedes. Where does Mercedes go? Does she go to WWE? Does she, return at the Rumble on Saturday? Or does she actually, in fact, go over to AEW and work with Tony Khan and the roster that he has over there in AEW? It's the same thing with Okada. Will he go to WWE or will he go to AEW? It's still yet to be seen, man. But I do believe that this year for pro wrestling is going to be insane. I think it's going to be a crazy year for pro wrestling. Like I said, the Rumble's this weekend. It's going to be insane. It's going to be a great year just for pro wrestling. And, my standpoint's been the same on AEW too, man. I'm a huge fan of AEW. I'm a huge fan of pro wrestling, period. I want both WWE and AEW to be successful because there needs to be the alternative. And I want AEW to be that, where you don't have to just watch Raw and SmackDown. You can also watch AEW. And I think it helps both companies, man. Competition, I told you guys this multiple times, competition breeds success. And obviously Tony Khan's not that stupid to realize what WWE and Nick Khan and Hunter and, everybody over there in WWE are doing right now as a whole. I'm sure it's gotten Tony Khan's attention. And I think this is time where Tony Khan needs to really, hopefully, be in more talks with the TV contract with Time Warner and Warner Media. I'm hoping that, you know, we do get some kind of announcement here soon, possibly for an HBO Max deal where, you know, Tony Khan can put past AEW pay-per-views in the Ring of Honor catalog and future pay-per-views, if you will, on HBO Max moving forward. I think it's just a win-win for both Tony Khan and AEW, to be honest with you, to be on HBO Max. I do. Not only for just the wrestling capacity, but for the consumer. I think for the consumer, it's fantastic. It opens up a lot more stuff for AEW. They can add more shows to that too, behind the scenes stuff. I know they had that behind the scenes show for AEW where they were kind of going backstage, and a lot of it was Britt Baker and Eddie Kingston and Adam Cole and stuff like that, and Sammy Guevara. You know, you could build that show up into HBO Max and make it, you know, a program for HBO Max. It's a possibility. But to me, if I was AEW and Tony Khan, I would really be focused on, you know, TV talks, which I'm sure they are, but I would also, I'd be dead serious about the HBO Max stuff. I would, especially if they are going to 12 pay-per-views a year, whether it be this year or the following year. I think it's something that I think Tony Khan and AEW really need to entertain as far as it pertains to HBO Max. But with that being said, this is my review of AEW's Dynamite. I hope you guys are out there staying safe, be careful, and remember, stay classic. Peace.